You're good to go.
Hello, everyone. They told me you're all unmuted, so you can all speak now.
Hello.
Hello. I'm so excited that everybody knows
Hello.
how to talk.
Hello,
This
Christine.
Hello. This will be a totally different presentation now because you can speak to me.
Great.
Hi,
Yay.
Christine. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for coming. So I'm super excited. So I'm going to get started because I know we're all tired and wanting to kind of end this off. So welcome to Dying to Live, learning from your COVID-19 lived experiences during a pandemic. And what I can, hold on a sec. There we go. So what we're going to start with is, what is a lived experience? I know the first time around, I asked people what they thought a lived experience was. Does anyone have a definition that they know of a lived experience?
If anyone would like to participate, if you could please raise your hand in the chat bar so we can see just who wants to participate, so we don't have multiple people talking at once. That would be wonderful. Does anyone want to give a definition?
If no one raises their hand, Abigail's going to pick a person. So what is a lived experience? Come on. You're all very smart people.
Whatever we went through, hopefully successfully learned the lesson.
Oh, very good. And a beautiful accent. Yes, a lived experience is something that you've had experience that has a lasting impression or a lasting impact. The experience can be negative or positive. A lot of times people look at it as it has to be a negative one if it's stuck with you, but that's not true. It can be a positive experience. The last couple of years, we've all been experienced living in a pandemic, and how we react to COVID-19 in a pandemic is very different. So what we're going to do is explore some different ways that we experience things and what it's been like to live through a world pandemic. So what has been your lived experience with COVID? As you can see, for myself, living in a pandemic was very, very overwhelming. When COVID-19 hit, I had finished writing Dying to Live, which was, and from the last presentation, somebody asked me why I titled it Dying to Live. And I thought that was such a great question. So I thought I would explain why I chose that title. I've spent over 20 years working in the field of death and dying. I mainly focus on children and youth and how they process the loss of a loved one. My first deployment was 9/11. And so when I decided to explore my lived experiences and how they've impacted me and created who I was trying to figure out a title. And my husband flipped it. I'm dyslexic. And he was like, you know, what if you flipped it? You went dying to live instead of, a lot of times I say people are living eventually just to die. So by flipping that, what we're looking at is the fact that we're all dying to live this full, exciting life. We don't want to just be here on earth, living our days out, waiting to die. So that's where Dying to Live came from. And learning from your lived experiences means taking you through a various steps in activities and exploring your experiences and seeing what you've gained and learned from them and how they've affected your perception. So that's kind of, I just wanted to explain where the name Dying to Live came from. So when COVID hit, I had completed this book. I was on a plane on the way home from Florida, and I was listening to the news. And when I returned home, obviously all the resources, being the only grief resource center in Canada, I was completely overwhelmed. Funeral homes were ordering crying teddy bears. We were using the Where's Robert Grief Kit like crazy. We published and wrote Cora and the Corona, one little girl's journey while in quarantine. It just became overwhelming. And I had this enormous amount of anxiety that I would not be able to serve all these people. I would not be able to to be there for all these grieving people. Obviously, it gained me some attention. My family and I went on Family Feud, but I'm kind of curious as to hearing somebody else tell me, what was your experience like when COVID hit? Like, where were you kind of in your life or your career, and how has it kind of affected that? Someone's gonna raise their hand.
I can talk, but I don't have
Sure.
one of those hand raisers. April 20th, I had a heart attack.
Oh,
When
wow.
it first, and I ended up in the hospital, and they did I don't know, cleaned out carotid artery to the heart, and it was just as COVID was starting. So I think in March or April or March of that year, March of the 20th, and then April, and I am telling you, when the ambulance came to pick me up, they said, bring your phone because you're going to be in isolation for 4 or 5 days after your operation, because they knew where they were sending me. And but me being as proud as I am, they shipped me back to Cambridge Hospital when they finished the work in St. Mary's in Kitchener, and I ended up in Cambridge in a single room by myself, waiting for my COVID test to come in, negative or positive, and that took almost 3 days. And I had my phone, and if it wasn't for my phone, I think I would have gone crazy.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to that. Like the nurses, when they came in, they're all fully gowned, and there's nobody to talk to. Like, it's just no books, nothing, and it was kind of, wow, this is what it's like. It's just so instant how life can change, eh?
So
The
creepy.
experience.
It's kind of like a movie.
It's like a movie,
Yeah.
and then once the COVID test came back negative, it changed. They walked in like normal, you know.
Oh,
And then
and
they
that
did.
must have been such a play in your head. You must have been like, okay, I'm free now.
I'm free, and I know all the nurses up there in the mental health ward at Cambridge Memorial Hospital. I remember the heart doctor saying to me, he says, "Would you like to talk to one of our mental health workers?" And I said, because I'm too proud, I'm a counselor, of course. No, I'm okay. You
Yeah.
need some medication? No, I don't need it. But meanwhile, I'm full of anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny how my own pride got in the way, eh? But I made it through.
Good for
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for listening.
No, it's fantastic. And I think the story was great. And I think I recognized your name was Don Johnson.
Yes, yeah, Miami Vice.
I
I
was
wish.
about to say it's a great show from the 80s, man.
Yeah. Giving my age away.
That was actually an excellent story to share. Because that's exactly what a lived experience is. And everybody's lived experience of COVID is completely different. You know, and for myself, the level of anxiety of my career took over. Just that fear of trying to serve those people, such as Nova Scotia, when that happened, that picture with all those teddy bears, those are going out to that community. And I'm sure you're all aware of what I'm talking about. And so many things that were happening that you regularly take care of, but then on top of that, looking at all the aspects of COVID and how we're going to address that. So I'm going to show you some things in your packages that hopefully people were able to download. I have summarized all these activities for you, and they're activities to help people connect that physical body to the emotional. I want to give you tangible things. I want you to walk away and go, I might actually try that and see if it works on my kid, my husband, myself, my friend, or a client. I always like to test them out on people I know just to see how they react and to see what my natural responses would be. So the first thing we're going to tackle is the bottle of burdens. So I want to take a moment to define burdens, grief, and death. We often look at death as a loved one dying, but there are many forms of death. We need to realize that loss of any kind results in human sorrow, and that in turn is grieving. So a lot of times people will come to me and say, well, no one's died in my life. But I'm starting to feel all these different emotions, and anything that causes human sorrow, such as the death of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, employment, the loss of limbs, the loss of so many things, anything that you loved dearly and then was taken from you, you will have deep sorrow and start to grieve. At what level that grief impacts you will be determined by you. Burdens are things that rise up to bother you. Think of your reactive mind, and that reactive mind is that hen in a chicken house going, you need to process and regurgitate and regurgitate. And I'm sure you see this with your clients where they need to just talk it over and over and over. And then all of a sudden, and you're like, whoa, what happened? And it was like their wise mind all of a sudden went, bing, I got the answer. I understand why that happened. So COVID-19 and living in a pandemic has created so many burdens that we're all shuffling down the bottle. I use myself as an example through this presentation because that's been the ultimate thing I've been analyzing my whole life. And with shuffling things down, I knew I was going to hit a point where this bottle is going to crack open and these burdens are going to start to come up and my reactive mind is going to need to work through them. And then we've also defined what a lived experience is. And the last is a behavior task assignment. And I'm going to show you many behavior task assignments that are to activate your mind, body, and spirit in order to respond to different things. So the first thing is a bottle. Here's a bottle. That's Princess Leia. I don't know if you can see it. So you can get yourself a jar and stick somebody in it. I can't find my camera. Look at that. Too much. Princess Leia. I used to have Annie, but I've had her for 20 years, and it was an old 80s doll, and the elastic broke and her head popped off right in the middle of a presentation. So I was like, that's not what happens to you when you're grieving. But I ended up finding Princess Leia. I need to find another Annie. So what I like to do is take the jar and place, you can place yourself, you can place any type of little character in there. And this is a great representation for people to go, okay, exactly what is she talking about? Here's a bottle with a person in it. And before we start, we need to look at what can a person carry within the bottle? What could be in your unconscious mind? And a lot of times we all carry these burdens and they're all trapped into a bottle and it feels like we're watching a movie. So when we listened to Don, it was interesting because he was describing things like, you know, nobody was around me. And all of a sudden, you know, once they said you're COVID free, the movie switched and it changed and it's surreal. And I'm sure we all can relate to that. So a lot of people who are going through experiences or dealing, especially with grief, feel like they're in a fog. And what I like to do is give them the analogy of the bottle. But before you go and say, hey, let's take the top off this bottle and see what's in it, we need to do a few things. So I just want to mention that take a moment if you need before we move into answering questions and exploring your unconscious mind. The chat is open. And at the end of this, if you need to discuss anything or debrief or you go as deep as you want to go, just send me an email. Love to chat further about that type of stuff. So we don't share our pain willingly with others, but we need to. In order to heal and move on, sadly, too many times in today's society, we try to save face and keep up with the people who don't really exist. We try to have this amazing Facebook profile to showcase our amazing lives, but that is often not the truth. I'm here to tell you that you're not alone in your pain, and no one really believes your Facebook page either. I'm sorry. We all want to get that good profile. But I worked with a woman and I wanted to share this story with you. She was in a shelter and she felt an enormous amount of grief. And she was badly beaten by her husband, who she had lost her mother prior to this. And when she came into the shelter, she had recognized me. And I was doing a contract there, just working with her and other people that had experienced an enormous amount of loss. And while I was working with her, she looked up at me and she's like, my pain is nothing compared to what you've seen. And I remember looking down to her saying, what are you talking about? And she was like, well, you've seen world tragedies. And I said, no. I go, yours is worse. And she stopped for a second and she was like, what are you talking about? And I said, being alone in your grief is worse. Being in a world tragedy where people are supporting each other and there's groups created and there are people there to be with you, that's one thing. But to be sitting here in a shelter alone with your grief is worse. And a lot of times people are sitting in these bottles alone. They don't realize if they open the jar, if we start talking, and we don't have to dive in really deep, but I love to encourage people to write books, we will realize we're actually not alone in this bottle. So before you decide to open up the bottle for someone, we need to make sure that there's a support system there. We need to make sure that counselors are with them, that friends are with them, that there's a support system in place before we decide to say, hey, I'm going to open up this bottle. Gonna tell you, I opened my own bottle myself, and a lot of the things I'm teaching you are from my 20 plus years in deployment, realizing that, yeah, I was very blessed. I did have a support system that helped me do this. I do know a lot of people looked at me like I was a little crazy when I wrote my first book, and they were like, do you want to go talk to someone? Very much like Dawn. I was like, no, I'm good. To find out years later, maybe I should have, but it's all good. But let's start here. So in your package, I'm going to find mine because your faces are on you're going to see a page of questions. And this you'll be able to photocopy and use with your clients. So the first question is, when something happy happens, who do you first call? Who do you share it with, and why? So take a moment, either to yourself or write it down, or if you have the handouts, fill them out. When something happy happens, who do you run to? Like if you won the lotto, who are you going to call? For myself, it would be Nathan, my husband, and Chelsea, my daughter. And I think the reason that I kind of go for them is they are the most excitable. So they really, they get into things and they jump up, but that's mainly where I go. When something bad or sad happens, who do you share it with and why? So if someone dies, if you have a bad day at work, who's the first person you'll tend to call? Mine is my father and my husband. They seem to be able to help me fix things. They help me through the regurgitating of the reactive mind. Jen is my friend, and I'll call to talk things out with her too. Whom do you laugh with? And this includes pets. So don't ever underestimate the value of the love of a pet. Mine is Jacob and Cora. Jacob is my oldest son. He's 25 and Cora's 9. And they're constantly doing crazy things. They are me. And so I have a lot of fun with those two because they're very excitable and got a lot of energy. Who drains your energy and who fills you with energy? Interesting part about this is that it's usually the same people. For myself, Cora and Jake, they're most high energy people, but they also fill me. They make me feel great inside. Nate and Chelsea, they're excited for me, but I feel like Cora and Jake, if I want to wake up, it feels some good energy, I would head there. But I also have to realize it's kind of like chocolate. You eat too much and then you crash and burn. Then who do you love? Who do you really love without borders? And what I mean by that is, ask yourself, after this experience of a pandemic, who do you love? Who do you really love? Like, Dawn, who did you text on that phone while you're in that hospital? Those are the key people. Mine's my father, my husband, and obviously my children. They're easy to love. So you have all these answers in front of you, and the person is like, well, that's pretty easy, pretty basic. So then you take it and you place it in a heart support. This too is in your handouts. So what you want to do is you want to take the answers from that sheet that we just filled out, and you can either draw 3 circles too. So that's what I love. If I'm out working with a client and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I need to draw something really quick, I can draw 3 circles. It's kind of like mind mapping. And you place yourself in the middle. So I'm Chris. And instead of placing my family on the outer side of this circle, we're going to place my family circling me. So the people, when something happy happens, who do I first call? Nate. And then we go on with the rest of the people that I answered in these questions. So we have Nate, Dad, Chelsea, Cora, Jake, and Jen. So now what we've created for this person is, instead of me introducing myself as I'm Christine, and here's my plate of problems, I'm able to present to you as, here's Christine, and this is my support system. A lot of times people, if they're in rehab, will use the organization that they're staying with, your counselor, the person who's helping you complete this form. These are people that are there to help you. And I think sometimes we need a mind shift to realize it isn't this and my problems, it's this and these people and my problems. And what I love about this is I will post it on someone's fridge, I will put it on the wall, and it will ever change. Like if you meet new people come into your life, they might be your support system. We know that old wise tale, like I'll walk the journey a while with this person and then we part our ways. And they may have just been brought there for that purpose. And that's okay, because that's who's in your support system at this given time. Gives a great visual. A lot of times my clients will color this and bring it back to me. So once we've done that, now we can move to the bottle. And a lot of times here, I will actually open it up and then just leave it with the lid off so that people realize we're going to kind of dive in here. Sometimes they will cut the sheet up and put the pieces of paper directly into the bottle. So go as deep as you need to go or you want to go. I've done these activities. Some people dive right in and it evokes some pretty good emotional reactions, but just take a step back and look at it and decide where you want to go with it so that you can utilize it with your clients. So you're going to open your bottle and I want you to be able to say who has died in your life, including any animals or people or pets that you were close to. So this is interesting because a lot of times people will say to me, well, I've lost a lot of people. And then you're going to get this huge list. And so what I like to do is just take a moment. And when I say who has died in your life, what's the first person that comes to your mind? For myself, it's the death of my brother, Robert. I was 14 and he was 19. And unfortunately, my brother went to the bottom of Clifton Hill in Niagara Falls. And if you see it now, there's a shopping mall, but the gate would go like this, and then there's the falls. And he thought it was grass, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to hop the rail to go pee." And he hopped the rail, and it was the tops of trees. So he fell through and hit a concrete slab and floated up at the Maid of the Mist. So at 14. Here I was, no one ever spoke about death. No one ever really said anything. It was kind of like the hamster died, just stuck it in a Cheerio box and it went in the backyard. You never really comprehended or talked about this subject. So to be 14 and all of a sudden your brother's gone, that is obviously what brought me to my career, why my company is called Robert's Press, and why my first book is Where's Robert? But that hit me big time. And there's many different journeys or roads I could have chosen. I'm very thankful from that support system that I just showed you that I chose this road. But the next question is, what other losses have you encountered? And these include divorce, friends just leaving. A lot of times, working with youth, they'll just say, my friend just got up and left. I never saw them again. That is a loss to them. Retirement, loss of limbs, loss of self-esteem, loss of connection with the world. For myself, I am not a confident writer, even though I've written, I think 5 or 6 books. I am dyslexic. I come from the special learning disability class. I lost my confidence in my educational abilities. And the other interesting part about this, and everybody that you work with when you work with burdens will say, I think this is a really silly burden I have. And I do. But it is an insecurity I have. I'm not sure how to shake that. And I've worked at it. I've proven myself over and over again to myself. It wasn't until grade 11, a math teacher looked at me and he read my math test and he said, if I flip them, you actually passed the test. And I remember looking at him going, so what are you telling me? The rest of the world is backwards? And he just started laughing and he was like, yeah, the rest of the world's backwards. And then I realized if I start at the other end of the sentence, it all makes sense to you people. So that's where I thought, okay, I got to flip the way I'm thinking. And I ended up graduating with a scholarship and everybody couldn't figure out why. But here I was in high school, the girl whose brother supposedly jumped over the falls and was in the special learning disability class, which at the time looked like a closet they put you in. And I was dyslexic. So yeah, that all affects me and who I am today. Are you a caregiver for someone? And when I ask myself this question, my answer is no, because I think about caregiving for elderly people, or you think of someone dying. And then I realized I have a whole family. And so I have a family that I care for. Balance is very important to me. I try to feel like I'm not spending my life doing my career, but not taking care of my family. So I'm very in tune with keeping that balance going. Some days it feels like chaos. I'm not going to lie. It's just chaos. But other days it's just trying to keep that balance going. And so that's what I'm a caregiver for. And a lot of people have children, pets, but obviously if someone's passing on or they're dying, it's a much deeper level of caregiving. Did you experience trauma as a child or loss of childhood? So not only did I have all those loads of problems, let's add in that I had a cancer scare. So 6 months after my brother died, I grew this mass on my leg. And I wanted to be part of the basketball team. I'm 6 feet tall. And got out there, made the team. And then the coach was like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm not sure. My leg hurts and this thing is here. And he ended up calling my parents. And unfortunately, I guess fortunately, I ended up at hospital for sick kids. And I remember this doctor, he looked at me and he's like, I'm worried that you have cancer. And this story always gets me. I just always felt so bad for my parents who had lost their son and then sat there hearing the news that their daughter might go through something. So we ended up that this doctor took me into the surgery. And I remember asking him not to wake me up. And he called me Sunshine. And he said, I don't know why. He goes, but why are you so sad? And he woke me up and he said, you must have an angel. And I go, really? And he's like, you don't have cancer. He goes, you have osteomyelitis. You're going to spend about a year on crutches, but your leg will be fine. You will walk again. And he goes, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. And that is, if you do not talk about the pain that you carry inside of you, you're going to physically kill yourself. That man was 100% right. And I spent my life studying that. And I learned very quickly that if we keep everything in this bottle, if we continue to live in that bottle, then we will never heal. We will never learn to live the life we're meant to live. And the last question, what burdens, traumatic events, or memories do you carry from your past? And for myself, it would be the special learning disability class, but also aiding September 11th terrorist attacks. When I decided to open the bottle for the first time, I wrote, Where's Robert? A children's grief kit. And I would show you, but I've ran out. And it came with a memory box and a journal, and Crayola Canada sponsored it. So we had crayons. And the concept was no child will grieve alone. I published it in 2000 in January. And all of a sudden, September 11th happened. And I received a phone call from the Walter Reed Medical Center, and it was this Dr. Owens. And when I answered the phone, he said, I'm looking for Chrissy. And she's got red hair, she's about 6 feet tall. And she's the author of this book, Where's Robert? And I would like to order 6,000 copies. And I said, yeah, and I'm Jesus Christ. Click. That was a bad plan. And my phone rang again. And I looked down and I was like, oh my. So I picked it up again. And he's like, look, lady, I don't know who the hell you are, but do not hang the phone up on me. So at which point I had my fax machine at that time in my bedroom. I looked down and a huge emblem came out. And he's like, look, I have over 5,000 children who are grieving. And you have a unique ability to share a story. And I think you can help me. So October 11th, I was deployed. I fulfilled the 6,000 books. But I now, in my career of 20, how many years later? I'm going to be 50. I carry all these burdens and memories of my deployment. I then went on to work with the United Nations and children's grief camps and murder camps, and absolutely love my career. But it's a burden. It's a burden to carry, and you don't just get rid of those memories. And I actually joined the PTSD, and I learned a lot. I enjoyed listening to what she was saying and other people sharing, because sometimes you think you're the only one. So no matter what, people often look at me and go, well, you opened the bottle and you're great. No, it's a continuous thing. It's a continuous change. It's a continuous growth. This isn't something you do and then all of a sudden you're wonderful. It's something that you continuously look at and move forward with. So when it comes to COVID, describe what has been your lived experience with COVID and living in a pandemic. For myself, the fact that I work with children, it's hugging. They love to touch and they love to hug. I'm looking at going to some camps. Camp Maple is one that we plan on doing, and just embracing those kids. They're touchy. I'm touchy, and so that really that plays on me, because I don't know how I'm going to honestly think I'm just going to hug people, but I'm going to try not to. But that's hard. And the other is the anxiety of the company and keeping it going and keeping up with what the needs are of everybody. So you've taken your bottle, and sometimes people want to cut them up, like I mentioned, and place them in. They're more than welcome to. But now what do we do with all this? I've just dumped out my sob story to you. And now I sit here going, okay, where do I go? This is where we go. We list them. And how do you know if a burden is really hitting you? How do you know if all of a sudden, like, that's my toughest one? Is to simply feel your body. Is to simply close that mind down, that reactive mind, and ask yourself, out of that list you have there, what's the one thing that makes your throat just close, or your eyes welt, or you feel like you're going to vomit? Something will happen to your body. If it doesn't, well, we have a few other activities for you that are coming up. So what's the number one thing? For myself, the death of my brother. It's 30 years later and it still hits me. It's amazing how this it's always there, in the sense of people always say to me, do you get over grief? And I always say to people, you never get over it. You integrate it into who you are. And I've obviously integrated my brother drastically into who I am. And so I don't think about him every day, but he died June 21st. June 21st comes by, I'm usually thinking about him. I usually send something to my parents. When we attend a wedding and one person's missing, you think about him. I went on Family Feud. I needed one more person. I would have picked him. So there's always that trigger of, yeah, that would have been okay. Number 2, cancer scare as a child. My own immortality scared the shit out of me. Just gonna say it. Part of me was like, wow, maybe if I die, I'll see my brother. And now remember, I'm 14, okay? And so, you're thinking, I don't know what heaven's like. I don't even know if heaven exists. I don't know what's happened. Maybe you go here, maybe you go there. Maybe you're like the hamster, you go in the Cheerio box. So many crazy thoughts. And that's okay. People have those, and a lot of children have those. And so I just remember thinking, what if I die? And then worrying about my parents, obviously. But, that was one thing, being faced with your own immortality and someone you love dying really hit me, really changed my perception of the world. Number 3, for me right now in my present day, it's the COVID. Yeah, I'm very stressed about working with kids. I've been working with them on Zoom like crazy, but we're starting to reopen now. So just that anxiety of all these rules and how we're going to implement them, and how are we planning on getting the kids to kind of go along with it, especially when somebody they love has died and they share that with me and they want to embrace me. That's going to be hard. So that is something that presently is in my heart. My career, I carried the burdens of my career, and I hope I was there for my family. They tell me I was all the time, but I always want to make sure whatever step I'm taking in my career that I'm present for them. And number 5, obviously, this dyslexia always comes back up, and I lose my confidence in that area. So it's twofold, and a lot of people have a burden that they think is silly, and they're like, I just don't understand why this bothers me. But I think it's something that impacted them at some point. There was a lot of ridicule for being in a special learning disability class. And, you know, hearing that consistently, like, you just don't learn like everybody else, you just start to believe it. And no matter what you do to try to change that belief system, university, all sorts of stuff, you still have it. So that is a burden to me. So the point with that being is, don't ever diminish what somebody says is a burden. And a lot of times you will get people who will just want to throw out some, mind my French, bullshit at you. And that's okay. Let them, because you get to repetitively do these activities and that gets them thinking. And maybe they're just not ready to go there. So what do we do with all that stuff? Well, we take all that stuff, and that is the outer circle of your heart support. So you go back to your heart support and you say, there's Chris in the middle. This is my support system. And outside of that heart, you place your 5 core burdens. Literally being able to take your bottle and dump them out. They're no longer carried within here. They are out on the paper. They're out of this bottle. And the nice part is you can place them all back in if you need to and put the lid on. And this way, people are able to have a visual that they can go, here I am. These are the people that love and care for me. And these are the situation. This is the situation that I'm going through. And I can walk through that situation with other people. It doesn't have to be solely me. So a lot of times COVID has caused us to carry many irrational and rational burdens in our bottles, from the fear of hugging someone to the death of a loved one and not being able to say goodbye. This has been huge in COVID. And you know, I know when somebody first told me this, I had a rough day that day when they said, you know, you can't, when you drop your loved one off at the hospital, that's it. They're dropped off. You're not going to see them. And if they die, chances are you will not see that body. Dealing with funeral homes and trying to support that sector took a lot out of my staff and myself, because these were realities that people don't necessarily want to embrace. And but it was a reality. And you know, a lot of people are carrying those burdens of, did I get to fully grieve someone? Did I get to be fully present? And chances are no, but it's for the safety of all. And so trying to support those people is tough, but I'm sure your clients will be coming through the door with not only the set of things that they've been challenged with in prior to life or prior to this pandemic, but a whole set of new things, and that are brought on by COVID. People are extremely angry right now. The world and the politics, they're huge. And these are the things that, you know, you're going to encounter with these clients. And we want to give them an avenue to express, but we want it to be in a safe, controlled environment. And I feel like the heart support gets them started and gets them talking about it. So managing your bottle. And I'm sure you've all been able to connect this to your, you know, compartmentalizing your dirty laundry in the closet, or, you know, all those type of little sayings. And so I like the bottle because everybody has a different one. And people will say to me, well, okay, I have this, you know, bottle, what do I do with it? And I'll say, well, there's chances are you're doing all sorts of fun stuff with it. And, you know, a lot of times people think, I'm good, it's contained, nothing's going to happen. Well, I'm here to tell you that the lid pops off. And when the lid pops off, what do? Well, all sorts of crazy stuff. You start engaging in excessive sports, you could exercise, drink, gamble, smoke, sex, drugs, some sort of an addiction of some point. For myself, at 14, I learned the value of screaming. And what I would do is my mother had this horrible, disgusting English wallpaper all over my bedroom. And she told me I was not allowed to tape to it. So I was into, yeah, believe it or not, heavy metal goth girl because I was all to death. I pinned Bon Jovi, Whitesnake, Metallica posters all over my room. And then when the bottle, right, because you can only contain so much crap in here, would pop off, I would scream. And I would just rip all the posters down. And then I would take days to pin them all back up. But what happened was I couldn't control the bottle. So what happened? I'm at school. The top falls off. I blow my lid with a pair of crutches in my hands. And, you know, they sent me to the nurse. She gives me a shot of Demerol in my ass, puts me to sleep, and the whole cycle starts over again. And that's what they did. And no one knew what to really do with me. So the bottle is a great way to contain these things. But what happens is we can't contain them. We need to put them out on the heart support. We need to address one by one. So just being able to recognize that this exists in you is the first step, is to realize that this is a thing. And, you know, some people will say to me, I don't have a bottle. I don't really think about these things. And that's totally okay. But if you're dealing with an addiction or you're dealing with things about yourself you want to change, chances are you derived that from something. And we need to figure out what that is. So you ponder a few questions. What came first, the egg or the chicken? I bet you no one knows the answer. And, you know, I have researched this to death because a lot of times people will say to me, well, do you think the egg formed? I don't think we're ever going to know. But the one thing I do know is your body is like the shell. And what it is contained is the yolk. And that is your mind, your essence, your consciousness. And a lot of times just simply handing someone an egg and them looking at you thinking you're insane and asking them what came first. And a lot of times people will look and go, I'm fragile like the egg. And I'm like, yeah, you are. But if you take it from each end and you push, the egg doesn't break. So sometimes we do need a shell. Sometimes we do in life. And other times we don't. Other times we need to let it go. But it's just learning when to let it go and when not to let it go. So what causes you to see the things that you do the way you do? What causes you to react the way we react? And is it different for everyone? A lot of times people will say to me, I don't know why I react so negatively to that. I don't know why that pisses me off. I don't know why I love that. Well, these are super heavy questions. And you wonder, what causes your perception? So we're going to do another activity. And this also is in your kit. And this is called perception. So we've opened your bottle and placed some things in it. We've learned about your support system and your heart support. But now we want to know, how does that all affect you? How does that, you know, who really cares about what happened to you in your life and the experiences you had? Why would that be important? Well, we're going to figure that out. So perception. Do our experiences change our perception? So I want you to take a look at this picture, and I've included this in your package too. And what do you see? It's pretty blank, a bird in a cage. Somebody sent me from this conference the meaning of the bird in the cage. It was a really unique from another culture, and I didn't realize I tied it to this, but I'm going to have to reread that because it was really good. How does it make you feel? Indifferent, nice, calm. What does it make you? Why does it make you feel that way? Take your time and don't rush. Birds are pretty and they make nice music and it looks like a pet. That's what lots of people will say. If I were to title the picture Freedom, how would it make you feel if you think of COVID? Kind of bad for the bird. He could be free, flying with other birds. When I started to use this in COVID, a lot of people said they felt trapped. But then it was interesting because other people were able to spin a positivity to it and were safe. So everybody's answers are going to be completely different. And they're going to be completely different depending on the day and the mood. So sometimes repetitively doing these activities with somebody brings back different answers. And then you can kind of take the one that seems to pop up the most. What would you name the picture and why would you name it that way? Again, different all the time. And so I like to use too. You can pick pictures off the internet. You can, I use these things. They're called coaching cards. They're really neat. So they'll have like all sorts of pictures and I use these cards all the time. That one's really, there you go. How you feeling about that? And so they're so good. And they have like a mat to lay them out on. So it just evokes conversation. So you can use any picture, but realize it should be a good one and ask a series of questions to get someone to talk. A lot of times, you know, we've experienced so much trauma that it's hard to even talk about. And sometimes you don't even want to talk about the trauma. But if you ask me how pretty a picture is, I'm good to go. So, why did you see what you saw? Perception is the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. Belief is the acceptance of the statement is true. That's huge. Just because you perceive something and you have the ability to feel it and it goes through all your senses, it doesn't mean that it should be accepted and become a belief. When I gave the picture a title, did your perception change? Meaning, did you see the picture as the same thing or different? Like a light bulb went off. Can you relate to this picture to your life? And working with young kids, yeah, it was like when I went to school, they stuck me at home on a computer. I felt like the bird in the cage. We couldn't go out. We couldn't see our friends. It was awful. And so they definitely expressed their pain on that. Do you think it's possible to change your perception about something? I just did it. I just changed your perception by giving it a name. And that is one of the key things to teach somebody. You have the ability to change. You have the ability to look at something completely different. The lens of our perception, what causes our perception to be our own individual lens of the world? For myself, this is 9/11. These are pictures I took when I was down there. And I remember when I returned home from this, I shouldn't have took the post-traumatic stress disorder course before this. It made me think. I came into the house and I remember saying to him, if you want a divorce, that's okay. And my husband looked at me and he said, what are you talking about? And I said, I'm a different person. I've spent over 10 years working in world tragedies. And I don't care what I eat at 5 o'clock at dinner time. And someone I worked with once shared, well, I'll go home, we'll mow our lawns. And I used to think, what the hell is that old man talking about? And then I went home and I mowed my lawn and I looked out at the world and everybody was mowing their lawn. But to me, I could feel the grass. I could smell the grass. I could see the bugs. I stopped. I looked at the world. And I thought that my husband wouldn't want me then because I'm not the person he married. And his response was that he smiled at me and said, I'm amazed you're my wife because I love you more than anything. And I believe you finally became who you were meant to be. So what I thought was a flaw turned out to be that was really me. I did go out and buy a motorcycle after that too. He wasn't really happy about that, but I love riding my motorcycle. But my heart fell in relief that it was okay to embrace this. It was okay to look at my life and go, I know a lot about grief and death and dying. I've experienced it. And to be honest, I love the field. I'm passionate about it. And this is where I want to stay. So our perception of things do derive from our experiences. A lot of people will say, I believe this. And then when I say, why do you believe that? They have absolutely no clue. They'll say, well, my mother believed it. Well, that's good, but that was like 30, 40, 50 years ago in another era. Why do you believe it now? How come you're there? And, literally taking myself and deconstructing and then reconstructing. So this picture here depends on your mood. Some will say, I see the word hate. I see the word love, but it has both, and it has hate and love. So returning to our bottle of burdens, could they be responsible for our beliefs and perceptions of things? Chances are yes. The things we experience in life do cause the mind, body, and soul to create a perception or belief about oneself or the world. When you look at your bottle of burdens, ask yourself if they have caused you to see things differently. Have you created it or affected your belief and perceptions of things? You have the ability to change the meaning of a picture, and you have the ability to change your perception. And if you address your burdens within your bottle, I think, yes, we can change the direction. We can change our perceptions. So now we're going to kind of jump into emotions. And, opening the bottle of burdens and looking at all that definitely evokes an enormous amount of emotions in people. Obviously, you've seen that with myself, even 30 years later. They are the most challenging aspect of being human. And with working in addictions, the clients and the families often carry a lot of emotional baggage that can be triggered. So emotionally or physically by the senses. So something happens, it triggers them. They then start to use, they then start to do the behavior that they know is just going to go around in that circle and shouldn't be done. So you ask yourself, why are most people fearful of the very thing that makes us human? That always fascinates me. It's the one thing that makes us human. So this was a study done. And what they did was decided to ask a whole lot of people where they felt emotions within the body. And you'll see that majority of people are in their heads. Anger, fear, disgust, happiness, even sadness, surprise, anxiety, love, content, pride, shame, envy, we're all mainly in the head. We're mainly in this bottle, spinning around thinking about stuff way too much. But then with depression, we're not thinking at all. It's all just in that body. And that's, you see that physically where people are not wanting to get out of bed. There's, and neutral. I don't think I've ever felt neutral in my life, but I guess there might be a person out there that does. I honestly think neutral would be a very good position to feel. And maybe that's what you can gain with that meditation. But an interesting study, because it is showing you that, during COVID, people are feeling all these emotions. And if you're could be out and if you just brush near someone a little too close, they're going to be erect. They're going to jump. The anxiety level is up here and the fear level is up here. So we need to be really aware of the fact that people are in their heads. They're scared. And one of the things I think is interesting is the body carries muscle memory. We talk about it all the time. Why in the world wouldn't it carry memory? Why wouldn't it carry the emotions? A lot of times people are like, well, you have muscle memory, so you can go back on that diet, pick up those weights, you're going to look great. But it doesn't have the ability to carry your memories within your body. It doesn't make sense. Of course, your body carries your memories. Your head is part of your body. So a lot of times those emotions are here. They're being carried physically. And a great way to explain to people about emotions, and I love this, is to take a pinwheel. This is my pinwheel. Whoops. So you can get a pinwheel anywhere. You can get them from the dollar store. You can draw the picture. You're the center of the pinwheel. So I want you to put your name in the middle, or you can put you. I put you. And then on each point of the pinwheel, you put an emotion. Happiness is an emotion. A lot of times people will ask me that. Worrying is an emotion. Whatever emotion you're feeling at the time or your client's feeling at the time, you ask them to put on each point of the pinwheel. A lot of times if they're children, they'll color it, they'll make it the color they feel. And then the best part of this is you then say to them, okay, so this is how you feel today. Sometimes it might stop on fear. You're feeling completely fear. All day you're thinking about it, or guilt. You feel guilty because maybe you felt happy and then that made you feel guilty. And you feel guilty because the person you love has died, or you experienced something and you shouldn't feel happy, you think. And then there's these other days where the wind comes and you feel like that. You feel literally crazy. You feel like your head is just spinning nonstop, and you fall. You think, I'm nuts. I'm absolutely nuts. And I'm here to tell you, you're not. The fact is, your emotions are things that are moving within you. They're moving within your body. So some days the pinwheel is just spinning out of control, and that's okay. Go back to that heart support, calm yourself, stop the wind inside, and look at the emotion. And it's a great way to look at your clients and be able to say, some days it is going to spin, and that's okay. And some days it might stop on something that you're really not happy with, but come out with some tools. How do we address these? Even just a simple commercial can trigger you. And all of a sudden you have a flood of tears. All these things are like the wind and the weather. One day it's great out, the next day it's not. And that's the way emotions work. Interesting is a study that was done is there is only one emotion people cannot express, and that's grief. And that is the gift of my job. I get to meet people when they have fallen, and I literally call them naked. I get to meet the true people. I get to meet people who are stripped of all, and it is sad, but at the same token, I get to see them stand again. I get to see these people for really who they're capable of being and what they're going to do. And when people experience traumatic events, so many stand up and do so many great things with it. I wanted to share this story with you. I was working in a camp for military, and this mother had a couple children, and her husband had died in Afghanistan. And with the children, they asked me not to share that the father had died. They wanted me to work with the family and say that dad was coming back at some point. But the youngest of them all, he would stare at me and he would watch every movement. And I realized that, he was well observing everybody's body language more than their words. And there's always these subtle clues that when you watch people and you see the words coming out, but we all have friends like this. The words are coming out, but they're just like bullshitting themselves and you. And the body is doing all these other things. So this little guy, he looked at me and he was like, why does she cry so much then? Why does this happen? Why is that happening? And, it was hard to continue with this. And, I never once said, your father's not dead. And at one point he said, what do I do? And I said, ask, just ask, but be gentle. So he goes up to his mom and he says, is my dad dead? And she says, no. And she's like, he's on an extended deployment. And all of a sudden, her body language switched. And she fell to her knees. And as a mom, she so badly wanted to protect these children. And I get that. But they knew. And that's the interesting part about emotions. You think you're right in what you're saying, but the body will not allow you to hide that. Emotions are like water. They flow through everything. And this is a good example of how we all understood the mom was trying to protect these kids out of her love for them. But in turn, they protected her. They came back to her and said, look, we're all going to make it through this. And they did. But very observant. People are very observant. So with the end of this here, I'm going to share some very quick activities with you that you can use also when with your clients, all sorts of different things. And I just kind of wanted to go through some quickly so that you have them all. And this one is called Our Love is Inseparable. So you're going to take Play-Doh. I know, 2 colors of Play-Doh. And it's not for children. So one of the interesting parts is I presented Hugs, which is this book, to this conference. I think 3 years ago or 4 years. It was a while before COVID. I've lost track of time. And while I presented it, everybody kept saying, you need to do this for adults. And I was like, you think adults would play with Play-Doh? And they were like, you should do it for adults. So that's why I came out with Dying to Live. It is an adult version of the 6-week program that runs in our school systems and hospices on to helping children grieve. But we put a bit of a twist on it in the sense that it's helping people to live a happier, more fulfilling life. So these are activities that evoke an emotional response from a physical activity. So being able to do a behavior task assignment, and I just love watching people's responses to me because, you know, we all talk about how great our childhood was. Oh, I love my childhood. You know, remember the good old days? How come every time I want to bring you back there, people are like, I'm not doing that. Why would I play with Play-Doh? And I'm thinking, because you loved it as a child, why wouldn't you love it now? So you're going to take 2 pieces of Play-Doh, different colors. I got purple and teal. You're going to take the first color, which is going to be purple, and you're going to mold it into something that represents you. So a lot of times people will take this and create, you know, golfing, flowers, whatever you love to do. In a sense, you're taking your burden or your grief and you're creating it into a physical form. So something you love to do, something that represents you. A lot of hearts will come out, whatever really is about you. I've seen amazing things made out of Play-Doh, actually. And then you're going to take your second color, which is the teal, and you're going to mold it into something that represents someone you love who has died. And a lot of times you'll get the hearts. I'll get, I remember one guy made a fishing boat. It was an amazing. And he made boat, a fish, a rod. And this was for his son and him. And so you're going to have 2 pieces of Play-Doh, one that represents you, so your grief kind of and who you are, and then one that represents someone you love who has died. You're going to ask them to tell you why they created what they did. And then you're going to tell them to take the 2 colors and mush them together. I've seen people make one whole color out of 2. And then once they're all blended, you say, take it apart. And they look at you and you go, put them back to where they were. And they'll say, I can't. And that's when you have the ability to say, well, we can't take your loved one from you. No one can take my brother from me. I will always have crazy red hair like him. I'll have blue eyes like him. He is part of me. He is who I am. And no one can take that away. And if, you know, I know so many times I would love to say, can I just get rid of this? You can't. It is in you. It is part of you. Our love for something or someone that we've lost is inseparable. We can still keep it. It is still there. And I think we lose sight of that and don't tap into it. And all we focus in on is the loss. It's a great activity to show somebody that they're still connected. We're still connected with these people. The next one, I like this one too, your value. So you're going to take $5. If you're in the States, you can use $1. We don't have that here. And you're going to ask your client, do they want $5? They're all going to say yes. And then you're going to crumple it up. And you're going to say, do you still want it? And they're going to look at you and go, yeah. Then you're going to throw it on the ground and you're going to step on it. And you're going to say, do you still want it? And they're going to say, yep. And then if you can, this is illegal, but, you know, rip it in half. And then they're going to look at you and you're going to say, do you still want it? I ripped it in half. They're going to say, yeah, I can tape it back together. And then I usually say, what are you going to do with it? The majority of people say, I'm going to go to Tim Hortons and buy a coffee. And then I'll say, exactly. That's what I do. I teach people they're as valuable as the day they were born. No matter what happens to you in life, no matter if a divorce happens, you get crumpled up, people hurt you, someone you love died, no matter anything, why can't we see the value in ourselves? We're like money. We're as valuable as the day we were born. Just because we have experienced trauma, we've experienced life, that doesn't mean we're lesser of people. We're as valuable as money. The $5 never loses its value, nor should you. And that's a great activity and a simple activity to show somebody that they're as valuable as the day they were born. And every time they look at a $5 bill, they're going to think of that. So the recap I put together in your toolbox is these activities. They are all there for you. And the last one is Cora and the Corona. Included Cora and the Corona. There's a PDF version of the book online there. It's for free. I have a French version also. We still give out hard copies of Cora and the Corona, so you're more than welcome to enlist and ask for those. We have Cora and the Corona course, which was asked for by the school boards. That's a course you can download for free too. So this gives you a lot of avenues and things I hope to help you along with what you're doing and the challenges you're facing in COVID. I wanted to be able to give you things that you can walk away and do. So I'm hoping that's what I've done. So I want to end it off with just sharing a little story with you. This is the ending of my book. And I realized with the previous presentation, I didn't express the fact that this last page talks about the fact that I was 40 years old and I gave birth with midwives in my living room with my family. So I had taken just this page, and I'll share this with you. An Indigenous elder once told me, cleanse the death from you. Do not bring death home. Now I have brought life home. I ask myself, is living fully obtainable after so much trauma and brokenness within me? I've learned that trauma and the brokenness have not devalued me. Rather, they've increased my value. My exchange rate is high, and I am worth so much more than I will ever realize. So many of us are worth more than we can see. When others share their stories with me, they often start with, it's nothing great. To learn that their stories is amazing. And not only does it help me see a different person's experiences and perspectives, but it helps others. We need to share our stories for the education of generations to come as we all learn through each other. Through my life and my experiences, I've come to learn this. Death sees no difference. Death does not care, death does not see color, faith, religion, wealth, or fame. It is the only equalizer of discrimination. Death does not care who you are or what you are. It cares to teach you that together we stand, together we grieve, together we heal. I now also believe this. Life sees no difference. Living does not see color, faith, religion, wealth, or fame. It's the only equalizer of discrimination. Living does not care who you are or what you are. It cares to teach you that we stand together. Together we live, together we heal. When we live fully, we don't see differences. We don't judge other based on wealth, color, faith, or discriminate. We live to the fullest. And we are so busy living, laughing, and loving that we don't have time to compare. Not only do we recognize ourselves for what we are capable of, but we are open to loving and encouraging other people. In death, we unite. In the creation of life, we unite. Is it possible to live fully? The answer is simple, yes. For as I write these words, I'm living the life I was dying to live. So I want to say thank you. And yeah, we all made it through 2 days of like online learning. That's pretty impressive. And does anyone have any questions, comments? I never looked at the chat because I can just talk for hours. So perhaps Abigail, or if anybody else has any questions or anything in comments, it's free game, man. Go to town.
So just to keep a little bit of order in the
Oh,
court, you know.
Abigail wants order. I do not.
It's just hard to hear when so many people are talking at once sometimes. If you guys could raise your hand or just send me a little note and I'll add you to a queue or something. Also, if you guys want to type it into the chat, I do keep track of those, and I will present it to Christine if you don't feel comfortable chatting face to face today. Hussein, I see that you have you want to discuss
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Go for it.
I want to tell to Christine that I believe the secret of your success has been your sense of resiliency, self-believing, and empowerment. And the power of the angel that has been watching over you for the last 30, 40 years. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Oh, thank you. You make me cry. Thank you very much. I believe that.
Believe it or not, when I was writing that half an hour ago, I cried myself.
Oh,
But I always tell myself and my clients, crying is good because
exactly.
our indigenous culture teaches us that crying cleans your eyes, you know, and get rid of the toxic of your body. So I'm glad I took this section with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I believe that. I've learned so much from so many different cultures that I just embrace my emotions. And you know, at first I'd be shopping and people would go, "Are you crying?" And the tears would flow, but the face seemed normal. And I would say, "My soul hurts. That's all." You
That's
know,
right.
it's just what I do, and it's okay. Thank you so
Good luck.
much.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
William, it looks like you want to say something.
Me? Did you get me?
Yep, you raised your hand. Was that a mistake?
No, that's okay. Christine,
Yeah.
hey, on your support heart or heart of support,
Yep.
I noticed your dad's name. I didn't notice your mom.
Oh, my mom.
Okay, that's that. Thanks, Christine. You have a good evening. Bye.
It's kind of interesting. My dad and I are super close. I have a sister, and my sister and my mom are very close. But my dad and I are the same personality. So he often tells me I'm very much like my mom. And so I think it's interesting because when I did it, I really chose people that I would run to. And I don't know how to answer that, but yeah, I have an amazing mom and a lovely sister, but my dad and I connect, and we always have. I'm a tomboy. So my dad, I should tell you one exciting thing right now. My father, he's just been diagnosed with Parkinson's, but we ride motorcycles together. He has Indians. And so we were thinking about getting Servicar, which is a Harley Davidson motorcycle with 3 wheels back from the Army days. And he just bought one, and he called me and said, "I just bought as a Servicar." And my mother encouraged it, which I was very shocked about. But we found a new way to ride together and be together because the 2 wheels wasn't going to work for him. So I'm kind of excited about that. But yes, I definitely feel more connected to my dad.
My dad was a dispatcher in the war, and I also ride.
Oh yeah, he was a Royal Mechanical Engineer. So we just started reconnecting with all this, and it's pretty exciting stuff. It's neat to watch him go back towards it. But I honestly think when my brother died, him and I became very close, and it's great. It's really good. But he calls me his tomboy. He's like, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Good question.
Yeah. This is Don again. How are you?
Yes, good.
This is fantastic because the jar and the lid and the person inside it, I've opened up my jar many times. And your story and my story are almost a perfect match.
Mm,
except for that I went to special school, special ed, and special this and special that, and failed grade 4, and failed grade 5,
yeah.
and but it was due to the abuse at home. But it's when I had to open up that jar after my cocaine addiction, and I started to face my traumas. My brother passed away, my mother passed away, my father drowned. So all these traumas were built up, and then the sexual abuse as a child, and just the cocaine, the coping.
Yep.
But I kept that bottle shut until I was 50.
Oh, wow. You took that far, my friend.
I took it that far until finally I went into recovery. And that's now I'm a certified addiction counselor. But I've had a life of many trades, but it's so familiar how if I didn't open up that bottle, I don't think I'd be here today.
Yeah, that's so true. And thank you for sharing. I did an interesting study for the Niagara School Board here. They had a school that had they had like 21 deaths, students who were experiencing the loss of a loved one. And this is public knowledge and on my website, so I can share this story with you. The young girl, one of the main young girls that we were focused on, she would light garbage cans on fire, and all these kids were troubled children, they called them. They couldn't integrate into class, and one kid used to stand up and just scream. So they had her hearing checked and all sorts of stuff. So the young girl who lit things on fire, we started the Hugs program in the school. I decided I would run it myself with the help of some counselors there. And I asked her, how come you always wear turtlenecks and all this stuff? Well, her father lit her mother on fire or something like this happened. And she went under the bed to get her brother and the cat. And the other little girl who screamed, I said, why do you scream all the time? And I would leave school and she would open the window and go, bye, Kristen. And the teacher, you could just see this teacher's, and she's like, so that you hear me. And I go, well, and she goes, my mother never heard me saying I love her when she was dying. So here all these children had these behaviors that had nothing to do with education. They had to do with, the trauma they're experiencing. So for Christmas, and I said, what would you wish for Christmas? Thinking I was going to get, I wish for this or that. And the little girl whose mom burnt to death, she said, I'd love a funeral. And I said, why? And she goes, I never got to go to my mom's funeral. I was in the hospital. And I thought, oh my goodness. So we had a funeral. I created a funeral. And when I did my report for the school, I said, these children don't need a special educational class. They need to be cared for. They need to have a grief group. They need to understand that what they experienced is affecting them. And their grades change drastically. So I often think a lot of times my learning disabilities were connected to the trauma I was experiencing also. So it's a really good point, Dawn. Mm-hmm.
That was excellent. And I think your presentation really evoked a lot of emotion in all of us hearing about your life story, and just the pieces about hearing about other people's story too, and how it's evolved with them today. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to say something now. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I want to encourage people to write books. That's what I think. We need to leave some information behind, especially Canadians. So yeah. we tend to not. But it's been a long 2 days too, so I'm good to go if you're all happy. I'm really, my bathtub's calling me, but I have loved getting to know you all. And I kind of just want to say that I never pictured myself in the world of addictions. And that 4 or 5 years ago, or however long it was, when I presented and I saw that correlation, that's what made me write my next book. I was so impressed with how all these crazy little activities I created, I thought were just for people who were dying, made me realize, wow, people are in addictions because they've experienced this type of stuff. So it's really eye-opening. But Mhm.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for coming to our presentation today. We really appreciated having you, and this was so wonderful. I might even reach out to you later myself because I just was like, wow, that was so powerful. So thank you for listening and teaching us all these things, and I really do appreciate it. Sorry, my cat's in the way. Yeah, so if no one has any other questions, we can end this session. You can get to your bathtub and the rest of you can get to dinner.
That sounds good. Will you send me this chat thing? Or do we get to,
Yeah, absolutely. I have a copy of it, so I will message it to you once I download them all. Probably not tonight, but in the next day or so, I will get all the chats to the speakers.
love to get to know people. All right,
Awesome.
perfect. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Everybody.